Ready? Welcome everybody back to the Man Cave. I'm Raphael Leah.
And I'm John Jackson, and we're going to talk specifically about the Mets, because there's a lot going on with the Mets right now, believe it or not.
Yeah, we're going to separate our Mets and Yankees segments today because we really don't have much more to talk about in terms of sports, except for baseball, which is the meat of the sporting world, if you will, throughout the summer. So we're going to just jump right in. We're going to talk the Mets. Two specific names, all right? We're going to talk Yulieski Gourriel, and we're going to talk Jose Reyes. Now, one name might be familiar, especially if you're a Mets fan. One name might be a little out there. Maybe some of you haven't even heard it yet. So that one is a name brought up to you by our very own John Jackson in an article he wrote, which can be found in the description. Excuse me. So let's start with that. Go ahead, John. Explain.
So, Gourriel is a Cuban third baseman. He's 32, which might scare some people. That's pretty old. And he's probably going to cost a decent amount of money. Most of these Cubans have been very successful recently. Cespedes, Jose Abreu, Tomas has been, somewhat successful.
Reyes.
Yeah, Reyes especially, and Puig at points. Some people have trouble with Puig being a superstar, being nothing.
Talent.
He showed it at points. So the Mets need offense. They're in dire straits right now. Even though they're in the top 5 in the National League, technically, I think they're 3rd in the National League in home runs, but it's so close that it changes every day. They hit 2 last night, but they're 28th in runs scored, so they do need some help. And the thing with the team, there's not one player that's really that bad, starting at least. Conforto, he struggled, but then you have other options in the outfield. You're not getting rid of Cespedes or Granderson. Darno finally came back. Loney hasn't been doing bad, plus Duda's going to come back. Walker's been doing well. Cabrera's been doing well. And Flores, for the most part, at third, he's been doing well ever since David Wright got hurt. But that infield is the weakest part of the Mets. So they could use an impact bat, number one, obviously. And it needs to be not just somebody who's mediocre. It has to be somebody who's heads and shoulders above the rest. And the infield would help because everybody can move around. You could put Walker at third. You can put Flores at first. Guys can move around. And Gourriel is a plus defender, plus bat, and he can play short and second as well. And just to tell you his stats, last year, off the top of my head, he hit 500 with the 589 on base, somewhere in the 800s, I believe, slugging. And he had 173 at-bats. He hit 15 home runs. Yeah, 15 home runs and 51 RBI. And that's, as you know, not even a third of a season. That, in a season, somebody might hit 600. They might have 600 at-bats. So this is a guy who, if you triple his numbers, obviously, he probably wouldn't have kept that pace. He probably would have hit 45 home runs, 153 RBIs. That's what he was on pace for. If you tripled it to 522 at-bats, which is still less than 600 at-bats. Now, you could say Cuba doesn't translate exactly the same to the United States, and I would say, yeah, Cuba's better, to be honest, because these are players that are coming over and hitting the ball out of every park.
Forget about hitting, pitching-wise.
Pitching as well.
I know when you look at some of the Japanese leagues and when you look at hitters from the Korean leagues, you kind of shy away because their pitchers, frankly, aren't at the same par as the majors. But their pitchers have been proven in the major leagues. So there's no excuse for not hitting well, or in your case, hitting very well. So questions for you then that might come from the audience. If you have any questions, leave it in the comment section. But questions that come off the top of my head are, you can't give me an exact number, but you anticipate then he hits around 30 home runs in a season in the majors?
3,100,
from what you've seen.
Yeah, I would say he would be close, but maybe even slightly under, possibly over what Cespedes did. But I would say slightly under, anywhere from 25 to 30 home runs, and anywhere from about 85 to 100 RBI.
I don't want this to go too long, but there's something that you didn't mention that was in your article that I want to bring up, is the contract talks that could unfold, because I don't know if most people out there are aware of this, but you do have a significant drop in pay, and in what you specifically pointed out was in the amount of years players are signed for out of Cuba.
Yes. because you had Cespedes was one of the first, so he came over real cheap, 4 years I believe, $36 million, and then it did jump once it hit Tomas and once it hit to Abreu. I believe Abreu got 6 years, $68 million, somewhere in the 60 millions, and Tomas got something similar. So you could say, since this guy's older, maybe slightly less than $10 million per year, which is what you're saving on David Wright, pretty much. So you're not going to be spending way over the threshold of where the Mets want to spend. So it's really something smart to do. 32, he's old, but like I said in the article, look at Granderson and look at Cologne. Age is but a number.
He's older. I wouldn't consider old.
Who? Cologne's really old.
No, I wouldn't consider Gourriel old.
Yeah, no, he's not that old. I'm saying if you sign him 4 or 5 years, you might be saying, oh, now you're getting 37.
You get 4 good years out of him.
Yeah, you could get 4.
Moving on to a player that's more familiar to the Mets, Jose Reyes. It seems like he's in talks with the Mets. It's not really talks. He wants to come back, and the Mets kind of want him there. Fred Wilpon coming out.
Jeff.
Oh, it was Jeff.
His son, yeah.
Jeff Wilpon, the COO, coming out and speaking out, really, something that we rarely hear. But he's speaking out against the Mets' recent kind of downslide in offense, especially, is what you were talking about. And Jose Reyes is right now he's not gonna stick with Colorado, and
they're getting rid of his $40 million contract.
They're gonna pay for his contract. So it just seems like it makes sense. But as a Mets fan, and as a Mets fan with integrity, as I know you are, there's going to be protests. There's going to be a lot of backlash if they sign Jose Reyes, obviously for the domestic abuse. The domestic violence abuse. I still got to get that wording sorted out. But domestic violence is an issue with Jose Reyes. Do you take him back with open arms?
Okay, so with Jose Reyes, I included him in my article why they shouldn't sign Jose Reyes and Danny Valencia. But what I meant by that is don't sign them alone and have that be the big move. If you get either guys, if you trade for Valencia, which I still wouldn't do because he would give up prospects, but if you went for Reyes, it would make sense as an additional player, somebody who could be on the bench, somebody who could lead off. You could put Granderson down so his power could be used with runners on base. But now, as Raphael said, domestic abuse. For those who didn't know, I think he was away with his wife, and he pushed her into a glass door or something like that. And I and Raphael would agree we do not accept that at all.
Well, that's the kind of behavior that's not accepted in the leagues anymore.
Yeah, especially baseball. They crack down with Chapman.
Yeah, because that's just something going on in all sports, and it's really had a downslide when you look at the NFL. So MLB really doesn't want to be involved in that. And they've had their share of domestic issues in terms of, as we were just talking about, Yasiel Puig getting in trouble, and Aroldis Chapman. You get this, and you want to steer clear of it. Most teams want to steer clear of it. Obviously, Colorado wants to steer clear of it. But it just makes so much sense for the Mets. He has the history with the Mets. He's going to give you a better bat at the top of the lineup than Curtis Granderson. He's kind of a waste putting him at the top.
He doesn't steal bases, Granderson doesn't get on base.
Even if you move him down to number 2, it's still, I feel, a step up to have a guy in that leadoff position. And he's going to get here for cheap because Colorado's going to pay off his contract. And it makes sense for the Mets to do it. And it honestly makes a lot of sense for Jose Reyes to be back in the spotlight of New York because this is his chance to make a little bit of amends. Because he's going to need a press conference with the Mets if he comes to the Mets.
I would say he needs an interview. The Mets, they got to work something out. Maybe he could go to some kind of counseling.
He needs that.
If he can.
He needs to publicly make this better, and he needs to serve as an example, I think, is the primary thing that baseball is looking at. Because you want these guys to come back and say, no, I'll donate to charity publicly.
Yeah.
I'll do this publicly. I'll go to whatever you want to go to. Counseling publicly,
therapy,
and you make it really known to the world that even if you make a mistake, you can make it better. Because you don't want to just make a mistake publicly and then go and fade away, because then you remember the mistake. You got to make it better, and especially here in New York, where it's really an unforgiving media scene.
Many people get second chances for different things. I would give a guy like Reyes a second chance if he's willing to make use of the second chance.
I was listening to Francesa, who's actually very good friends with Reyes. He knows Reyes, not that he's very good friends with him. But he said he's a very nice guy, and he was honestly one of the last guys he would expect to have done this. So it should, and you never know what's going on in people's homes, behind the scenes, especially with these guys.
You can't really judge with these people.
So it's so
because he didn't get a suspension yet. Or did he?
He was officially suspended.
Okay, so he was suspended. I don't know if they charged him officially or anything.
I don't think they charged him or anything.
They didn't have enough proof.
But they have. But
don't know.
It's just in terms of the public eye, it doesn't look good. But we're going to see what the Mets decide to do. They obviously want him, and he definitely wants the second chance. I think it would be good for him. I think it would be good for them if he makes a public amends. That's my stance on the situation.
And look at a guy like Brandon Marshall. He's had, if I'm not mistaken, he's had domestic violence abuse in the past, and now he speaks out on it. So he's changed his life and helped other people not go into it.
Changing your life is one thing, but helping in public is a whole other thing. That's what really separates you from... That's what really forgives you in my eyes.
Yeah.
So we'll see how that turns out. We'll see if the Mets community in general accepts him back. Until then, I'm Rafael Leah.
And I'm John Jackson. This has been The Manford.